Comic book movies have the great benefit of offering a wealth of material to draw from. Many iconic comic book heroes have decades of backstory and characterization, so when a movie goes to adapt them, it shouldn't be that hard to stay true to their character. Of course, filmmakers often want to make their own interpretation of these heroes and villains, implementing changes that go against the source material, for better or for worse. Unfortunately for fans, it's often been a case of the latter rather than the former, even if the MCU has led the way in showing how best to divest from the source material in question. Either way, it's one thing to ruin a character by just portraying them ineffectively. It's another thing entirely to completely do away with all of the things that made them so special in the first place. These are far from the worst comic book movie characters ever, but they are the worst adaptations. So, I'm Ewan from What Culture, and here are the 10 worst times famous comic book characters were radically changed for the movies. Number 10, Lex Luthor. Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. For those who haven't seen Batman v Superman, here, allow me to fill you in on Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor. God becomes man, man becomes God. God, man, God. Granny's peach tea, sweets! Luthor is supposed to be an arrogant industrialist who, in his own twisted way, blames Superman for showing him the limits of his own humanity. This is the Lex Luthor that has become one of the most notable villains in all of comics, but apparently this characterization was unsatisfactory for Batman v Superman. Luthor was reimagined as some sort of millennial prodigy, and this updated take on the character was neither welcome nor necessary. He was a scatterbrained idiot whose delivery was manic and plans nonsensical. Nothing about how he acted, other than hating Superman, caused him to resemble the real Lex Luthor, but instead a Zuckerbergian Musk-esque mess of embarrassing proportions. Perhaps the most superficial issue, but also the most unforgivable, is that he doesn't even remotely look like the character. Is it really so much to ask an actor to shave his head to play Lex Luthor? Really? All it would have taken was a razor and a nicer suit, and at least Eisenberg would have looked the part. But no, we have this instead. Number 9, Batgirl. Batman and Robin. Barbara Gordon being Batgirl is no small thing. She's the daughter of Jim Gordon, and hiding that double life from her father is one of the key elements behind her life. Moreover, because Batman knows this, he is essentially betraying his staunchest ally's trust by allowing her to help him. These traits are a big part of what makes the character so engaging and integrated into Batman's universe. So, when Joel Schumacher's ill-advised Batman and Robin did away with this identity, it lost a lot of what made the character work so well on print. Changing Batgirl into Barbara Wilson, Alfred's niece, may seem inconsequential to some, but it ruined the character in a lot of ways. She didn't feel a natural inclusion into Batman's world, and her desire to be a crime fighter just felt forced. None of this was helped by her lack of real development or engaging character traits. Number 8, Bane. Also Batman and Robin. Aside from the weird accent, Tom Hardy's Bane in The Dark Knight Rises was actually incredibly spot on in terms of characterization. He's a mastermind first and foremost, who lurks in the shadows and only resorts to using his strength when the time is right. Absolutely none of that was present during his role in Batman and Robin. Bane was demoted to the role of a grunting henchman that seemed only to be able to yell his own name, sort of like Jules when he's sober. The character was such an insult to the comic books in question and to casual viewers, it dramatically skewed their perception about who Bane was supposed to be. As walking muscle, his role could have been performed by any lesser Batman villain, or could have just been made up as a henchman for the film specifically. Instead, the filmmakers thought that dumbing down a villain known for his intelligence was the way to go, which seemingly explains the universe's crappy Commissioner Gordon as well. Number 7, Cyclops. X-Men. As Charles Xavier's first student and the iconic leader of the Uncanny X-Men, Scott Summers embodies nearly every heroic trait imaginable. He's noble, courageous, and a smart leader in the field, so while that makes him less exciting than certain other X-Men, his hopeful altruism has long made him a favourite of many. When the first X-Men film came out, none of these traits were readily apparent, and there were a few people questioning what had happened in the adaptation process. Cyclops was now little more than a jealous boyfriend who spent most of his time being bitter while ceding the spotlight to Wolverine. Outwardly, the character was the same, but the personality just wasn't there at all. It was clear to fans of the comics that this was not the same Cyclops they were used to. Things would only get worse as the series went on, and it was apparent that no one in charge seemed to understand what made the character work in the first place. Number 6. Catwoman. When speaking about radically altered characters from page to screen, it's almost unfair to even mention Halle Berry's laughable heroine. That's because it's abundantly clear that her character is Catwoman in name only. In the film, Patience Phillips is an artist for a cosmetics company who stumbles onto a conspiracy and is promptly killed to shut her up. She's then resurrected by a cat representing the Egyptian goddess Bast and gains cat-like powers in the process. If that sounds nothing like the Selena Kyle of the comics, that's because she doesn't. The personalities don't match, and the presence of superpowers cause her to operate completely differently. With all of that in mind, to say the character was radically changed is an understatement. Number 5. Doctor Doom. Fantastic Four. Doctor Doom is not just the Fantastic Four's greatest foe. He's one of the biggest bad guys in the entire Marvel universe. Traditionally, he's depicted as an Eastern European dictator with immense intelligence and an array of magical and scientific weaponry at his disposal. So, naturally, the logical way to interpret him for film was to make him a confident businessman whose main goal appeared to be trying to woo Sue Storm. Beyond his motives, his abilities were also given an unfortunate alteration, with the character granted metal skin and the power to manipulate electricity. These powers and relationships, conceived in an attempt to make him connected to the team's origins, just never felt organic. Instead, these contrived changes to his backstory only made him feel less essential than ever before, and more of a TV villain than what was basically the greatest Marvel villain ever put to print. It's funny, because if the rumours about the rebooted Fantastic Four were true and Doom was going to be a computer hacker, then the new version of the character likely would have been even worse than the one we got in 2015. But in a twist of fate, the new Doom being so ridiculously underdeveloped still leaves Julian McMahon's version as the most egregious, if not the worst adaptation of the classic villain. Number 4. John Constantine. Hey, right, you'd be hard-pressed to find me saying anything negative about Keanu Reeves. I love the bloke, but John Constantine, he ain't. Just looking at him, Reeves in no way resembles the comic book character from the iconic Hellblazer series. The failings of these changes go beyond just the superficial. The characterization of Constantine is just all wrong. He's meant to be somewhat unlikable, too cocky for his own good, but charming enough to keep you coming back. Instead, the cinematic version is just confident, quiet, and bland. There's no real trace of his distinctive personality. John Constantine is a character who, if adapted faithfully, could have provided a new spin on the heroic archetype. But instead of constructing a unique character like he is in the comics, the film made him like any other generic hero. Number 3. Galactus. Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. To be the dumbest, most offensive part of a dumb, offensive movie is truly an astounding feat. Yet, that's exactly what Galactus, aka the evil space cloud, was as the antagonist of Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. Galactus is one of the most fearsome and powerful entities in the entirety of the Marvel Universe. He's a towering alien being that consumes entire planets and is no small feat to vanquish. So, rather than give Galactus a physical form, or any sort of personality at all, really, he's literally depicted as a cloud that does not speak or do anything short of float around in space. The troubling change here is how it completely undermines his power. The Surfer is supposed to hype him up and make us fear what's coming, so that when he does arrive, it's absolutely terrifying. The film succeeds in the first part of this, but when the grave danger turns out to be a cloud, something we get a lot of here on planet Earth, the effect is quickly lost. Number 2, Hawkeye. So, you know how Hawkeye has pretty much become a big old meme this decade? Well, you can thank the first 2 Avengers films for that, because their depiction of Clint Barton was so far removed from his comic self that he may as well not be called Clint at all. Look, Clint has turned things around in a few scenes from Age of Ultron and Civil War, but to say that Jeremy Renner hasn't been given the opportunity to portray the character faithfully would be putting things lightly. There's barely any humour or any of the cynicism from the comics, and the introduction of a family and making Clint I suck at marriages Barton the very definition of Middle America just seemed to contravene everything about his literary origins. There's still time for Renner to do Clint justice, but honestly, who would blame him if he wanted to call it quits now? Number 1, Deadpool, X-Men Origins Wolverine. While Ryan Reynolds' brief cameo as Wade Wilson in X-Men Origins Wolverine was spot on, the travesty that would follow in the climax of the film in no way resembled the Deadpool of the comics. The powers were wrong, the look wasn't even close, and the personality was, well, it was non-existent. When a character's nickname is the Merc with a mouth, it's probably best not to sew their literal mouths shut, even if you think you're being dead clever by doing the reverse. In a way, the depiction of Deadpool was emblematic of the film's problems as a whole, as the filmmakers just failed to understand the character and treated him more like a plot point than as a fully rounded individual. Oh well, at least we have Ryan Reynolds films now.